Hi there, Kawhi here. In today's video I'll be making a quick UI guide. The thing you first of all want to get is Elvui. After you've get Elvui, down in the description there will be a link for my profile. You can just import that profile, and then once you've done that you'll get this profile. It is, in my opinion, really useful for your muscle memory, as there's no bars. After you've done that, you want to go get your WeakAuras. The ones you mainly want to get are the HUD. Once you've got the HUD, you mainly got the basic stuff like your offensive, your the trackers are kind of not important at all. The utility is for movement stuff and defensives. This one is pretty useful. For me, my debuffs are under my player frame. If you have the opposite of that, if your debuffs are above your player profile, you can just simply move this wherever you would like. Of course, it's up to you what kind of placement you would like. Once you've done that, basically you've got the HUD. You're almost done. The only thing you want afterwards is the buff bar. The buff bar has like multiple buffs, like your sigil, if you're playing this, your Heart of the Fae buff, which is useful for Mythic Plus, as Night Fae is our main covenant for that, as well as the Fireball stack tracker. This one is useful because you're then able to time your hot streaks and convert those into either Flame Strikes or Pyroblast instantly, just by predicting if it's gonna crit or not. Assuming your stacks are at like 3 or 4, you're probably gonna get it after casting another Fireball. If you're playing the best in slot weapon Antumbra, this one will be active. At the moment I'm not using it, unfortunately. But yeah, this buff bar is quite handy. As you can see, if I combust here, you'll see that Infernal Cascade is proccing. If I proc my Heart of the Fae, I do not only see the stack amount, I also see the duration of the ground effect. It's pretty handy. So yeah, once you have these two, there is just one more thing you want, and that is the major debuffs. The major debuffs is extremely helpful for certain scenarios. The one mainly that I'm talking about is your Rune of Power, as well as your Scorch WeakAura. This is quite handy for your muscle memory. Just by nature, if you see a descending timer, like clockwise, you would know that you're in your Rune of Power. If you're not in your Rune of Power, it will not show that you're in your Rune of Power, so you still see the descending. And for your Scorch, it is glowing, which means that in both scenarios, just by doing the fight, the mechanic, or in whatever scenario, you can just rely on your muscle memory to showcase whether you're able to Scorch, whether you're in your Rune of Power. That's why it's quite handy. There are some other WeakAuras, but any link for handy WeakAuras will be down below. I just want to end this video off by discussing a bit of pros and a bit of cons about my UI. One of the cons is that there's like a lot going on in the middle of the screen. You can argue that if you are in a raid or you're doing any kind of challenging content, you would need a lot of concentration on your middle of the screen. If your WeakAuras are there, then you, especially with the ones on top, as you see, it is quite, how do I say it, there's not a lot of room for your eye to witness certain mechanics. But fortunately we are playing Mage. You can always blink, you have access to Soul Shape if you're running Soul Shape. You also have Alter Time, which it means that we have a little bit more leeway in terms of our UI. If you're playing a melee spec, for instance, I would not recommend this kind of a UI with multiple buffs scattered across your screen. But as a ranged, when you're already AFK in the back, it's quite alright, it's not that bad as on other classes. The thing that's also a con would be overload of information. Sometimes there could be a lot going on your screen, like you have multiple timers, weak auras. Just maybe perhaps by hiding the UI you would have like a better result, especially in like a raiding scenario where just the fight itself is already scripted, and assuming you are progressing like multiple hundred pulls, you would know your entire rotation, your CD management, without even weak auras. But I would say it is not that bad once we're looking at the positives about this weak aura. One of the main positives is that a lot of your information is already there. For instance, I could disable my buffs and I would know where all of my buffs are. I could play around all of my buffs. I have multiple timers or weak auras that showcase the uptime of certain spells, for instance, so I don't really have to worry about whether or not I have a certain buff or not, which means doing my rotation becomes almost just muscle memory at that point. For that way, I personally prefer this UI. I explained the steps how you could get this UI. I hope you guys enjoy. I wish you guys mainly a good day. Thank you so much.